So here we go. Welcome everybody to the first ever national Integris virtual discussion. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's virtual discussion is around National Cybersecurity Awareness Month with a focus on making cybersecurity your secret edge. I am your host, Anthony DeGraw, VP of Sales and Marketing at Integris. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Greg Fielding. Greg is the Director of Professional Services at Integris, and he's based in Austin, Texas. He oversees all IT projects that we undertake for our clients. Kevin Dancoff. Kevin is a virtual Chief Information Officer and Strategic Solutions Advisor, and he is based out of our Atlanta, Georgia office. As a vCIO, he serves as a strategic IT advisor for businesses and provides direction for strategic improvements. Nick McCourt. Nick is a virtual Chief Information Security Officer and Cybersecurity Engineer. He is based in our Baltimore, Maryland office and works with organizations to develop security strategies with a focus on regulatory compliance and governance that matches their needs. And finally, Adam Torgerson. Adam is Director of Hosted and Cloud Services, and he's based in our St. Paul, Minnesota office. He's responsible for cloud computing, data center services, and the overall direction and management of the Hosted and Cloud Services Department of Integris. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining me today. And I think we'll get it started right away with jumping directly into our first topic that we wanted to bring to all of our attendees today, which is some real life stories out of each one of you from your individual specific regions and what that cybersecurity incident, what happened, how did we potentially help if we were involved in that situation, and overall, what was the business impact? And I think our goal today is to deliver understanding for the participants in today's discussion on business impact, and then how can we strategically use cybersecurity to win new business or grow our reputation. And we'll end with that specific section. So with all that being said, Kevin, I know you have a specific story around April Fool's Day that you wanted to share with our audience. I'll let you take it away.
It's not funny at all. And I feel kind of weird that I don't have facial hair. I feel like I'm out of place, but I hope you guys accept me anyway. So this was a company that I was working with, not Integris, not Provident, and one of the senior engineers who was also a gamer and a Bitcoin miner and was remoted in to the main system on his personal computer. And he clicked on a link and it encrypted every file on the client's servers for, I want to say 107 clients. Took them about 6 weeks to decrypt everything and get all the clients back online. And there were obviously several clients that left at that point. If, you can't trust your most senior engineer, then it's probably not the right place for you to be. It happened on April Fool's Day, and people were calling in and complaining, and the support desk thought they were kidding. They thought that so for at least an hour, nobody did anything because they thought it was a joke.
Wow.
It was rough.
That sounds extremely rough. Can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned 6 weeks, and to me, 6 weeks for any business, I don't care what size you are, how many employees you have, 6 weeks is a significant amount of business interruption. Can you talk maybe through a little bit from your knowledge of the situation? Why did it take 6 weeks? What were some of the things that caused that significant of amount of downtime?
There weren't, backups were not, up to speed. And there was a lot of files that were missed in the backups and backups that hadn't run in a while. So they were literally just going through and decrypting client by client by client. They couldn't just restore everything, as one would hope.
Yeah, and as you mentioned too, with that downtime came a few, maybe many clients that actually ended up leaving that business and going and finding another home.
About half of them.
Half of their business. Wow. Well,
Just
thanks.
one mouse click.
One mouse click. Kevin, thanks for sharing that. Nick, I'm going to transition over to you and talk about a breach that had existed for over 6 months before you and your team had gotten involved.
Yeah. So, interestingly enough, it was a client that we had just onboarded, and within the first 2 weeks, while we were going through, we're verifying everything. We started turning on some security controls that were left off by the previous IT provider. And what had happened was, is as soon as we turned that off, we saw some alerts, and I went, "Oh no, I know what this means." Okay, we went diving in, and sure enough, somebody's email had been breached, and the person residing and living in their email with them was there quietly for well over 6 months. So we spent a lot of time delving in, seeing how much information was stolen. Of course, we're talking to the organization. It's never a great intro, right? You come in, and the first thing you got to do is you got to tell people that you've established a brand new relationship with, somebody's in here. We've got to stop everything. We've got to see if we can root this out. So luckily we were able to actually corral the attacker before they got any farther. We found that they were trying to dig further and further in and do other things. And they were stopped by a few things, mostly because they'd been quiet for a couple of months. They had gotten into the account, they checked out the account, and then they stayed quiet. They were waiting. So as we came on board with this, and it was a very large client, we're talking about, probably somewhere between 250 to 300 employees. And there's that one mailbox, right? There's just one that can cause that much problem. So we ended up working with insurance. There was a data forensics team that we came in, and they ended up just partnering with us and using what we found, interestingly enough, to uh, basically build the case, figure out what was lost, figure out the attack to the reputation of the organization, and eventually close it out. And that organization is still thriving.
So, a follow up question on that I want to see if we can get some knowledge for the audience. When a threat, I think there's a lot of confusion about like why would a threat actor spend 6 months? Yeah, and maybe you have some insight into what type of data were they looking at? What type of data were they taking off the network? Any insights into what that threat actor over 6 months was actually doing hanging out in there?
Well, so looking for data is different per threat actor, right? It's different per group of threat actors, but they all operate and act as a business now. So when you go in there and you're waiting around for 6 months, it may be that you're waiting around because you're picking and choosing time, or you're actually character profiling the organization. So in this case, the threat actor was going after personal information, credit card numbers, social security numbers. They were looking for addresses. They were looking for personal data, like not just email addresses, but physical addresses. They were looking for phone numbers. They also data mined all of the emails of the entire organization, and they started poking around trying to get into other accounts, and they were modifying and changing their tactics through the course of that 6 months. But the idea, of course, is not to be loud, right? You don't go running in when you attack an organization and you throw up a banner and say, "Hey, I got in." It's, "Ooh, okay, I just got in. Let's see how quiet we can be. Let's see if we get caught. If we aren't caught, then we can go deeper. If nobody notices us, then we can get to the golden egg." And the golden egg is essentially just owning the entire network, owning the entire organization, and being able to use them either through ransomware or through going into personal accounts. So it really does depend on the type of threat actor you're getting. And we don't know anymore.
And you mentioned working with the insurance company in this situation, which not all organizations have an insurance policy in place. Many do nowadays. But can you describe your experience with as the new provider coming in, working with data forensics, working with that insurance company, and potentially just overall, what does that look like for a business organization?
When you're coming in brand new and the previous provider hasn't really been up to speed with everything, then you're you're already out of your comfort zone. And what an interesting litmus test is when an insurance provider comes in and you are brand new and you establish and maintain a relationship with them. Um, most insurance providers, if they come in, they don't like the way that you're doing things and they bring in their own forensics team. The forensics team will report back to them and say, I don't like these people, right? I don't like you. So that this may actually go to your client. This may go to the organization. The organization goes, well, we just signed with them. What this was instead, because of the amount of due diligence we were doing just to find this, and then for the data we collected, again, it wasn't just, oh, hey, we did it. And then we reset the password and everything's all hunky dory now. Instead, it was, okay, we need to pull the logs. We need to pull everything into one box so that they can actually take a look at it. And what that does is it fosters a more powerful relationship, even with that brand new client. It also, interestingly enough, fosters a powerful relationship with the insurance provider. What they ended up doing is calling us 2 months later. They're like, "Hey, can we put you on a list? We might need you."
Yeah.
And that's the kind of thing that you want when you're moving forward.
Yeah. What I really like out of that whole story is the ability to work with not only the new client that was brought on and inform them of something they didn't know about, but also then be able to provide and tell that story to help them with their insurance claim, data forensics, and continue to progress them forward to a path forward. Hey, before we move on to Greg, Kevin, I'm going to come back to you real quick because I saw Javier in the chat asked about your specific story. Was it a ransomware attack in that?
It was a ransomware attack, and the demand was just astronomical. It was in the millions. So they chose not to. I mean, I don't know that they chose, they just couldn't do it. So that's why they went file by file to decrypt.
Awesome. Thank you for that clarification. And Javier, thank you for the question. We're going to go over to Greg, who's going to talk a little bit more about MSPs. So people in our same business getting hacked as well. So Greg, I'm going to transition it over to you. You have a lot of experience in working with insurance providers and bailing MSPs out of these types of situations. I'm going to let you take it away, man.
Thank you. So in 2018, our company became affiliated, almost the exclusive partner of one of the syndicates of the largest cybersecurity underwriter in the world. So we actually had a dedicated incident response team and business resumption, which is one of the orgs that I manage now. During the year of 2018, that summer, it was pretty horrible. We had 7 or 8 specific MSPs that were targeted. Their infrastructure, their tools that they use to distribute patches or scripts or whatever it is, they would compromise that and then distribute through all of their clients in one big payload to infect and encrypt everyone, the entire client base. That's been that's the type of thing that keeps us up at night and make sure that we do all of our due diligence to, put all of our layers of security to keep us safe. But during that time, we've had a couple MSPs that are just like, they throw their hands up, they literally walk away from it because there's no recovery from it. But that year, and it's pretty much ongoing. It's only getting worse. You can see all the examples in the news, and keep in mind, those are only the ones that are public. No one wants to publicize this. It's such much larger, rampant throughout the world than what anyone is estimating right now. And so we would end up getting involved. We get involved and have to do the negotiations with the Bitcoin, with the hackers. And one thing that was actually really interesting along that is you'd find, it was mentioned earlier that, they're a business. So, why would they sit there and wait? I mean, they literally could be sitting there and wait because they just got so much business and so much work to do. And we found that some of those hacker groups were really unprofessional, and others were actually, interestingly, easy to work with, because they had like good customer service, because they knew if we paid the ransom and then they came back and asked for more, that we're not going to pay the ransom next time. So it's really scary stuff when we get calls on Christmas Eve or Christmas. I mean, they like to target, the holidays because people aren't in the office and they're not going to notice all the nefarious work they're doing. So we'll get these calls on, in the middle of the night where these business owners that built their business from the ground up are about to lose everything. And we have to go in there and I always kind of describe it like, project on steroids. We have to go in there and assess it, understand like what's the key thing, what's the most important thing to get resumed up immediately, and then kind of take control and coordinate how that gets accomplished while still retaining all the forensic data so that we can still have all the proof after the fact.
Yeah, key parts of Greg's story that I want to highlight too, because it always happens, is that this isn't going to happen at I guess like a preferred time for you. They're going to make sure that this happens on a holiday. And Greg has multiple stories about working after hours, on the weekends, on specific holidays like Christmas. I believe a big one this year happened around July 4th, that was targeting a lot of U.S. interests. Right, that's when they're going to focus on this, and that's when you're going to be, I guess, most susceptible to a specific incident happening and your guard letting down. Whether it's your employees or the people in charge of this, they're focused on this and they're running a business. Greg, one thing I wanted to highlight before we move on to is just your work with the insurance provider. What has your experience been with them, and what have you learned from assisting them in getting out or in the incident response or the business resumption of helping their clients or insureds out of these types of situations?
Oh, I'll tell you, it's interesting because some clients, they wouldn't have, a high enough their coverage wasn't high enough. So when you're negotiating these really large sums of money, and sometimes that'll blow right through and you're still paying money out of pocket. So you have to really understand what the value of your business is and assume that it gets 100% compromised and you very well might have to pay that ransom. What is that going to be worth to you? And with any type of insurance, it's a risk reward type of, or risk mitigating exercise. Going back and forth with the insurance themselves, you actually kind of understand, each group's kind of personality and what they bring to the table and what they're looking for. And it makes it, after working with them for quite some time, it makes it real easy to get in there and really identify, this is kind of, here's a false alarm, or you might as well not even put a claim against this because it's going to, take this out and that out. But the interesting case is that, like, with insurance, they'd love to have no claims, right? So it's in their best interest to keep serving, their clients. But hey, maybe you get the discount if you have all these specific security policies in place, kind of like, one of those programs for, hey, if you're a safe driver for X amount of years, you get this discount. It's kind of the same thing. And so they're really vested in all of their clients securing their infrastructure and making sure that, mitigating as much risk of having to pay out claims.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the industry that I came from. And I remember back in the day, you could answer 5 questions and get $1 million cyber liability policy. And now the complete opposite is true. We're seeing, mandatory requirements for next generation antivirus, multi-factor authentication. Like, they're starting to come to their insureds or policyholders and saying these things need to be in place or you're not even going to get a policy from us. And then the final thing I'll touch on that before we move to Adam is specifically the engineers, all the engineers on this call, right? Greg's team, Nick's team. I know specifically when they go in to do those forensics, when they go in to do that business resumption and get that organization back up and running, and they're working 24/7 after hours on holidays, I can tell you right now, the hourly rates are astronomical to be able to provide those types of services. So not only are you thinking about a ransom, but you're also thinking about what's the money out of pocket, or via my insurance carrier, do I have enough limit of liability to cover the cost of these services to even get me back up and running? And in Kevin's case, not be down for 6 full weeks. And what impact does that have? So with that, Adam, I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
I was going to say, you can take it even a little bit further. Let's say you get compromised, you put all this money into getting out of it. Then you have to turn right around and do the investment to prevent it from happening again. Otherwise, it's just going to happen again. So we had this kind of funny saying as, you're going to be our client one way or another. You can be a proactive client where we get in there and we take care of it, or we'll see you on the other side after you, get compromised. I mean, I know that's tongue in cheek a little bit, but we actually saw that happen several times.
Absolutely. It looks like Kristen has a question. Was it 6 months or 6 weeks they were out of business? Kevin, if I'm remembering correctly, it was 6 full weeks.
6 weeks, yes.
6 full weeks. Yep. And Greg's last comment works perfectly into Adam's story of a organization that got hit multiple times within, I believe, 2 days for a significant sum of change. So Adam, why don't you go through your story?
Sure. Good morning. As we know, most companies, they have their leadership team listed on public websites. This information is also available on social sites such as LinkedIn. And it's a good thing as it builds confidence in the consumer as they learn about, who the CEO is, who the CFO is, among other C-levels, and it builds that connectedness for like prospective clients. At the same time, this information is also available to the public and the bad actors, or what I'll call the wolf, right? So we've been teaching our kids and loved ones safety through fairy tales and folklore for centuries. And many of these tales apply to cybersecurity today. Most of us know the story of Little Red Riding Hood, right? Little Red Riding Hood gets ready to go for a walk to go visit her sick grandmother. And Red's mom tells her, hey, stay on the path. Don't leave the path. Don't talk to strangers along the way. The same applies to security awareness today too. We're told, don't click on links in emails, especially, if you don't recognize who the sender is. CFOs and controllers are told not to wire transfer without making that phone call first, maybe to the CEO if that's who's asking for it. So Red heads out down the path and runs into the wolf. And Red and the wolf have a conversation. And throughout the conversation, the wolf learns some pieces of information from Red. He learns that she's going to her grandmother's house and where she lives deep in the forest. Red just gave away some personally identifiable information. She also told the wolf that her grandmother's sick, which could relate to PHI or personal health information. And the wolf learned this intellect through social engineering, and he gathered this information. And with this information, he did one last great trick, and that was manipulating her. He sent her off into the field to go get some flowers. So he's like, hey, your grandma would like these flowers. Why don't you go do that? And while she was distracted doing that, he ran off and found her way to the grandmother's house. Even though Red knew she was supposed to not talk to strangers, stay on the path. Maybe she forgot, it slipped her mind, but she did it anyways. So this relates back to this company. I'll call Company X was targeted by a bad actor who purchased and created a fake domain that was similar to the company's domain. If it was Integris, maybe the G was a Q. So to like the I, you just glance over it, and so with the domain, the bad actor created the CEO at fakedomain.com. And that's like similar for when the wolf got to Red's grandmother's house. He was dressed up as the grandmother, impersonating. So the wolf, with the fake account, targeted the CFO, asking him to transfer $25,000. Of course, this was needed urgently, and because the CEO was working on a deal, and the money was transferred. and the bad actor got the money. Once the bad actor, the wolf, realized that they received the payload, they went back 2 more times to the well and got an additional 25,000 and 50,000 for a payload of approximately $100,000 wire transferred. So the company ended up calling us. And unfortunately, the money was gone at that point. However, we did get them in on a security awareness program that helped them continuously identify this information. So again, like, don't click on links, don't transfer information without a phone call first. Same thing, like, maybe they knew, but Red forgotten her mother's words. Don't talk to strangers, and follow these protocols when something doesn't smell right.
That was awesome. Thank you, Adam, for sharing that. That was phenomenal and a great analogy and to couple that story. So we're going to go move on to the second section here, which is 4 things that organizations can do to improve their cybersecurity posture. But what I really wanted to get out of this team, my team here, was we use the words, at least I do, and I say non-negotiable. What are the non-negotiable items that each organization should be putting in place? Very similar to Adam's story, it could be policies, procedures, it could be technologies, and the team's going to go through some items here. But if I'm on the other side of this, when I'm talking one-on-one with individuals, business owners, CFOs, COOs, it doesn't matter. I'm starting to talk about the non-negotiables, and I'll always point to, we live in 2021 now. This isn't 1990. It's not the 2000s. It is 2021. As you heard, each individual from all across this country has different stories of different sizes. It's 2021, and there's non-negotiables now in regards to cybersecurity, and each team member here is going to go through one. So, Kevin, I'm going to start with you again, and I think you're going to talk through backups with us.
Yeah, I'm taking the easy one, the most obvious one. It is backups. I mean, if you get hacked and you have a solid backup, it's gonna suck, but you'll be able to rebound from it. And but they're not the same easy backups they were in 2000 or 1990. As Nick said, they can get into your system and sit there for 6 months. So by doing that, they can get into your backups. So it's really important to work with your IT folks or your MSP to make sure you have the right kind of backup in place to make sure you're protected, you can bring things back up. And that to me, that's the most rudimentary, easy to implement first stage, but certainly not the most important. Just
if you have an incident and you go check with your team and you have a backup that you can restore from relatively recently, all of a sudden the need to pay for that ransom goes out the door pretty quickly. Kevin,
we were having a conversation earlier about this, and Nick said, "Nope, I'm not going to pick just one. I'm a cybersecurity guy. I'm not picking just one, but I'm picking that one, and Nick can take over from there."
Awesome. For backups, can you give the organizations, I know there's not one specific way to do this, but an overview of like what a good backup strategy would look like, how it would be potentially implemented and tested?
Yeah, I mean, I think the old school rule of thumb is the 3-2-1 policy. Is you have 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different mediums and at least one of them offsite. So it's because it's not just ransomware. It could be that your building burned down or things like that. So you'd be able to access it offsite as well. So I think that's the rule of thumb we tend to go by.
Perfect. And I'll add one context to this too, of making sure that they're being tested, and then also making sure that you can actually restore. You could do quarterly restores, biannually, whatever fits your business by the recommendation of these folks. But we go into a lot of organizations and we start off with an assessment, and it's all, that you ask the question, do you have backups? And the answer is, yeah, daily or nightly or whatever the answer may be off the top of their head. And then when we go in and actually get under the covers, we find out that it's not truly being done, or the last known backup was done here. And then, hey, have you even tried to restore? A lot of times you're backing these things up, but then when you go to do a practice restore as if a real situation, and you learn that server can't get up and running or whatever issue you may run into. So Perfectly said, Kevin. I appreciate that.
I'm glad you said that. That's a great point. And it doesn't take long to do that test. So there's no reason to not do it.
Absolutely. Nick, we're going to go to you, as Kevin mentioned, and we're going to talk about the layered approach to cybersecurity.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for the intro. Yes, I thought I thought it was a trap when I was first asked the question. Oh, pick one. No, I can't. Right. So the answer is it's got to be layered. It's got to be defense in depth. And a great example. This isn't even IT related. I got a phone call with a buddy of mine from college. This was a couple years ago. He goes, "Hey Nick, I'm thinking about getting a deadbolt for my front door." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, that's probably a good idea. I mean, it's the front door to your apartment, your home, wherever. It doesn't matter. A deadbolt's a good idea." He goes, "Yeah, I don't know if I actually need it or not, but maybe I should do that." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, does the door handle have a fancy lock on it? Is that what it is?" "Oh, no. The doorknob doesn't even have a lock." And I said, "Oh, so you have a door, you got a doorknob to your front door, and you don't have a lock." And he goes, "Well, it's an older door. It's in a historical building." I said, "Oh, okay. Well, where is this?" He goes, "Oh, it's the inner city." I said, "Okay. So you're in the inner city where the chances of being broken into go up exponentially. You don't have a lock, you don't have a deadbolt, but you do have a doorknob and you have a door. So the door's good enough. So if we pick the door is good enough to defend all of your stuff, yourself, and everything else." And he goes, half jokingly, he goes, "Well, Nick, the hinges squeak, so I'll know if somebody comes in." So is that the kind of thing though that we want to do with our businesses, with our organizations, right? This is your house, this is your home. So I've got a door that's good enough, or should we actually put maybe a lock on the doorknob, maybe put that deadbolt in? That's a good idea. But oh wait, what if people get through the windows? Do the windows actually lock or not? That's one of my favorites. Because someone's like, "Oh yeah, I put everything on the front door, but the windows you can actually just jimmy open with a screwdriver because there's no lock on the window." Because hey, nobody is 6 feet tall and can reach the first floor window, right? Because that can't happen with a step stool. So we're okay. No, I mean, you have to have all those different things. So of course, same guy who called me about a deadbolt, he called me literally last week and goes, "Nick, I just got one of those Ring doorbells. Those things are awesome." I said, "Did you get the deadbolt that we talked about a couple years ago?" He goes, "Oh, no. I was broken into. We moved." I said, "Oh, okay. So you picked up and you moved. Do you have a deadbolt at your new place?" He goes, "I have 3 deadbolts at the new place." And I was like, "Oh, that's good." He goes, "Yep. One for the front door, one for the back door, one for the doggy flap." And I said, "Oh, okay. So you put a deadbolt on the doggy flap. I'm sure that helps the dog when you're gone." He goes, "It doesn't matter. I have to be safe." So that you're going from one extreme almost to the other extreme, but I'd rather be at the other extreme. I'd rather have that extra layer. I'd rather be able to lock the dog flap just in case. Okay. I'd rather have the Ring doorbell. That way, if there's a mess, the mess is inside and it's a mess you're making, and it's not a mess somebody else who's just coming in freely is making. So it has to be everything. And don't get me wrong, Kevin, backups are very important. I'm not saying that they're not important, but you have to have your backups. You have to have your policies, plans, and procedures, managed detection and response, a vulnerability management program. I can continue going. It's not infinite though, right? There's a certain layer of things that everybody should have. And then there are a certain number of things that can be tailored to each organization as well. And that's my answer.
Awesome. Greg, I'm coming to you around design and architecture.
Okay. Yeah. So you kind of have to look at it when you're building out the infrastructure. That I mean, you could have pretty easy, pretty low tech office, or you can have a really complex design. What you have to do is you have to like assume you're going to be breached. Like where's your crown jewels? Where's the stuff that's most important that if it got out, is it intellectual property? Is it TII? Is it PHI? What is it that's going to be exploited? And really, when you like for example, going back to that MSP that 2018, there were several MSPs that chose this cloud backup solution that's super awesome and really cost effective. and it's worked for them. They do their tests and it worked really well. But guess what? Nobody tested restoring 16 different companies at the same time. The backup company couldn't keep up with it. So, so from a design standpoint, we do our same backups. We own and manage, like in our private cloud, we've got our stuff that we control, and we understand what it's capable of. We understand what it's not capable of. But part of that design is we have like snapshots on our storage. So they're not even backups, they're just snapshots. So if it's a 24-hour thing, like it just happened, we just like, it's an instant restore because you're not technically restoring, you're just loading what was on there the day before. So you got to kind of think about, how that works. And really, when we kind of go to this subject, I think about Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. Well, that's a big eye-opening experience when you get punched in the face. So think about it when you don't even have a plan and you just get, swiped with it. And kind of going towards what Nick was saying from a layered approach, there's kind of a natural progression through what you want to accomplish. And it kind of goes with, well, first off, educating your users. I mean, all the best being human are really easy attacks. So everyone's got to really understand what they're looking on, what they're clicking on. Then you have to, as Nick said, prevention through layers of security. And then going back to assuming you're going to get compromised, because it's probably going to happen. The FBI can't even guarantee that their stuff is always perfectly secure, right? So you assume you're going to get compromised. How long until you find out you're compromised? So you actually have to have key indicators of compromise, such as specific alerting or active threat hunting that lets you know right then and there that it's taking place, so you can mitigate as much damage as possible. And then especially in the regulatory companies that have to maintain certain standards, is you need to be able to go back and audit it, whether it's a simple syslog or a well-tuned SIM. You need to be able to understand what they took, how they got there, what your risk is. If you find out that someone just got in and they RDP'd to a system that didn't really have access to anything, okay, well, now you technically don't have to disclose that, under certain circumstances, right? And if you don't have that auditing, you have to assume they got everything. Otherwise, you'll be held, you could be held liable for it in the long term. And then it goes into the recovery, right? The backup, the restore, the rebuild. How are you going to recover from this? And one thing that I've kind of learned over the years is you have to understand, what is that key thing, like, especially when you're trying to rebuild, like, what's your plan to get back when that happens? What is that? We've known companies that literally it's a single Excel spreadsheet that they have to have access to. It's like, okay, well, that's easy. Or it's this one app or this one thing. So think of it in a way where you don't necessarily have to have everything back and running, but think about what the absolute requirements are for you to get back in business, to at least, save face or downtime and the reputational issues that come with that.
Awesome. I love the context of crown jewels. We also just phrase it in a different way. We say critical data. So you can think about crown jewels or critical data. And one thing our team is trained on is, first question I ask, where is your critical data? Where does it live? What are your critical line of business applications that you need, as Greg mentioned, to operate your business? A lot of times it's not many, but at least we can now zero in and focus specifically on those crown jewels, on that critical data and those applications to make sure if everything goes crazy, we can focus on those items, protect those items, get them back up and running and things like that. So think through that question of, where are your crown jewels? Where's your critical data? Adam, with that, I'm going to come to you on the administrative side, the policies and the procedures, and your thoughts on that piece of non-negotiables.
Yeah. So of course we should all be like budgeting and planning for security and an increase in strengthening our security posture. But what if the money, like, what if we don't have a lot of money for that? What's some low hanging fruit? And really that's, writing those administrative policies, those security policies, you know, with those, it needs to be set from the top down. So the tone goes throughout the culture of the organization. And to like Kevin's point on backups, right? Policy has to be written for that. We have to make sure that, we're following that 3-2-1 or whatever may be the best fit for that company. And again, with Nick's points too on the defense in depth, it's not just one policy, it's many, right? And you don't have to have 100 of them. You can have like, 10 core ones. Of course, there's easy ones that are free. Here's your password policy, and making sure that your systems are set to this, the technologies that are adhering to what the end users put in for passphrases. So it's not like 8 characters. It's not my mom's name with a 1 after it. Policy covering a security program of end user awareness. Again, that's free. Might cost a little bit of technology for like phishing campaigns, but it's really some work to like continuously educate the end users or the staff on here's what you need to know. Here's what's happening with security right now. So it's back to that spear phishing event with the little Red Riding Hood story, right? Someone sends an email to an employee at the workplace. It appears to be coming from a known trusted sender. This may not be stopped because it was very targeted. Like technology may not have stopped that. It might have given you an indicator like, hey, this is from an outside address. But sometimes we get used to looking at those tags at the top of emails. But it's it's adding the little things to it. So again, policy itself is not enough just to be written, but the top-down approach, enforcing with tools and continuous education is key to help bolster the posture.
Awesome. Kevin, I'm going to come to you for the final section, last couple minutes here together. But how can we use cybersecurity as a business advantage? You're going to specifically speak on reputation. This is my favorite one of this, so I'm going to let you roll with it. I'll probably add some thoughts as well.
Please do. I appreciate it. So if you think about you're a IT company and you get hacked and none of your clients can work for 6 weeks, that's not going to do well for your reputation. And you're going to be easily Google searched, and that information is going to come up. So, you need to protect yourself from that standpoint. But also, if you can say, hey, look, we've got, SOC 2 certification, or we've got this certification, that's going to make your reputation even look better. So it really comes down to, what are you doing to take care of your clients, customers, whatever, and what can you share with them to make you rise to the top?
Absolutely. And everybody always asks, especially when I was in my insurance career, about like, what is the reputation hit, and how do we potentially put policy terms or limits into an insurance policy to assist with reputation hit? And the biggest example I always give here is Equifax, which we all know got hit a few years ago. They were the best example of what you could potentially expect from an incident happening, and what does that mean financially to your organization. And Equifax specifically, a week after announcing their breach, within 1 week, they lost 20% of their market cap. And obviously for them, that's $1 billion plus, and it's a really large number and sometimes gets out of touch. But what I say to organizations all the time is take the same 20% number and apply it to your business. You may be a $5 million small business, and that's $1 million. You may be 10 million and it's 2. But you can use that same percentage as an understanding of what the reputation hit is going to take on your organization. And that's just immediate. That's not long-term, like Kevin has mentioned. Six weeks is 6 weeks, but what happened 6 months later? What happened a year later? So I talk about that, and I use that 20% number as a guideline of what potentially is going to happen to your organization from a reputation hit, like a incident that affects your customers. With that, Nick, I'm going to cruise over to you about separating budget and going after larger clients.
Right. So cybersecurity, probably a little bit more fun than just going out and buying computers or purchasing managed services so that you can have somebody fix the computers. And the reason why is, while yes, it's scary because it's, spooky season anyway, cybersecurity can be used as a tool to make you more money. And what we find a lot of times is if you start to separate it out as a different budget and you start to look at what you need to invest in purchasing these items or defining these specific layers, you get to use it to go after higher level things. Kind of look at it as a travel bag, right? For people to travel all the time, even through, today's times and trials, people that travel a lot usually have a travel bag, right? And when you take the travel bag, you're prepared. You've got everything in there but your toothbrush, because let's be honest, well, if you keep your toothbrush in there, don't tell me about it, right? So in the meantime, you have everything in there and you grab it, you go, you get to your next place and you get things done. So it's the same thing here, except for you grab your bag, you go to the next place and you open it up and you show somebody, hey, here's what I've got in my bag. Here's everything that I have prepared. And what that does, and if it's your cybersecurity layers, your documentation, your security policies and your administrative stuff that Adam was talking about, if you've got evidence of your backups, if you have those network diagrams and you're looking at the design, all of those things, if you maintain that on a regular basis, then you get to show somebody at the end of the rainbow, hey, here's what I have. And what that does is it floats you up to the top, right? So for example, let's talk about a quick industry here that might need that. Finance, right? Let's say you're doing financial auditing, you're an auditing firm. You have downstream compliance all the time, and you have downstream compliance. Sometimes it's SOC 2, sometimes it's NIST 853, sometimes you're using just CIS controls. It doesn't matter. If you have that bag, you have that travel bag at the end of the day, you get to show that off to people and you can say, here's what I have. Here's how organized I am. Right. And so what that does is that allows you to go after higher level contracts, higher level business negotiating, and it puts you at the top of whatever your industry you're in. And that's kind of the most important part of how to use this to, hey, how do we use cybersecurity to make money instead of just, hey, we're throwing more money into something, right? Yes, it defends you, but translate that defense into something that you can use for the benefit of your organization.
Absolutely. We've seen this specifically work with our clients in the government space, in the banking financial space, in legal services, as well as nonprofits and getting additional grant funding. So if you need a use case on this or whatnot, you're more than welcome to reach out to us and we can talk you through how investing in cybersecurity will help you go out and win larger clients or win larger contracts or get more funding for your organization. With that, Greg, I'm going to come over to you for the badge of honor and marketing and punching above your weight class, back to the Mike Tyson reference.
Yeah. So think about it from companies that will put like the Better Business Bureau, piece on there that said, hey, this is who, kind of checked off on us. And it kind of goes back to like what Nick says. If you've got your, SOC 1, SOC 2, whatever that you have readily available, it gets you exposed to potentially more deals. Like even just to get on the, the government DIR list, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. And depending on the contract you're trying to land, you have to have a specific, certification or maintain a specific compliance regulation. What I always kind of look at it from, like, if you think about like the FICO model, like if I've got a really good credit score, when I buy a house, I'm going to save myself actually a lot of money because my overall APR is going to be a lot lower. It's actually directly, it's a perfect example to business. Like if you're trying to get a business loan, having that already done and be able to show the the bank this. It's just going to give you more credibility. It's going to be easier to get pushed through, and more than likely, it'll probably actually lower your long-term cost on that loan as well.
Awesome. Adam, I'm coming to you on similar question, but about third-party vendor risk assessments. And it was already mentioned that downstream compliance needs. And I see pre-pandemic, I saw these picking up a ton of steam. And what I mean by that is I used to see clients get them. You answered the questions, you sent it back, you never heard again. Then it was clients were getting them, they were answering the questions, and somebody was verifying the information on the other side. And then it got to the point where they were actually not only getting them, answering them, verifying the information, but also coming in to prove that those things were actually existed. COVID obviously, I think, took a pause and all that with people focusing on other things. But what's your experience been with third-party vendor risk assessments, and how do you think through them?
Yeah, you called it out. They're going the full circle of actually asking for evidence at times these days. And it's that we have to look at this as like the due diligence. What other businesses in your industry doing? And one of the biggest one is understanding your vendor or third parties and their security posture. Who are they, right? It's your weakest link can be the downfall. That could be the security implication for your firm or your organization. So keep, having a regular, again, policy and process in place, to handle these and know who you're working with, like who's holding your data, the processing, is it encrypted, in transit, at rest, all those things. And this, you may have like outside firms doing this, or you may be doing this inside. So your policies do need to stretch if it's like the third party and assessing those risks. And then you pointed on productivity as well. From my experience, a lot of like small or even small mid-sized business owners, they may envision cybersecurity as like a nice to have and have some controls in place, but back to that defense in depth that Nick was talking about, it's a must to have that layered approach, because cybersecurity should be thought of as business continuity these days. It gives you the upper hand, when it comes to production. We're preparing for hackers with the fail safes, things like immutable backups, and your company has a disaster recovery plan, or even if it's like misbehaving employees. And it's been shown over and over that companies with strong security are less likely to get attacked.
Awesome. So that ends our conversation for today. We did want to leave some time for questions and answers. I don't see anything at the moment in the Q&A or in the chat. We'll give it a minute or two to see if anything does come in. We want to thank everybody for being here. I specifically want to thank Kevin, Adam, Nick, and Greg for joining us today on the first ever Integris webinar. We covered, I think, two or three time zones, 2 time zones maybe right now. We got one more time zone to go, boys, before we cover the whole country. We got Mark, will there be a recording shared? The answer to that, Mark, is yes. We will share it and we will get it out to everybody. We also, interesting enough, our marketing team will take this and we'll break it down into 1 to 2 minute clips and probably be sharing it aggressively across our LinkedIn profile, which is Integris. So you can go directly to LinkedIn and or Facebook, check out Integris, follow Integris, and you'll get a lot of these individuals' little clips shared throughout the remainder of the year. So if there's one specific thing you want to see or hear on or follow up on, those will exist as well. So the full recording will be available. Also follow us on the socials to get those little intimate clips. Thank you, Mark, for the question. That's all we have right now. I'm going to end it there, gentlemen. 5 minutes early, give everybody some time back in their day. Once again, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for providing your education, your knowledge to the entire country across all these different regions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Have a great day, everybody, and happy Halloween. See ya.